Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, We the People meet Sarah Smith. She is running for the 9th District in Washington against a guy named Adam Smith, not the same Adam Smith who wrote the book about economy, capitalism, but kind of the same because he's an establishment Democrat guy, takes a lot of money from the military-industrial complex, and we're going to find out, well, obviously we need to get rid of him. So we're going to talk to Sarah about that. She's a Justice Democrat and Brand New Congress, and she's already been on Jimmy Dore, so this is like small beans, but we're glad to have her because she's a progressive. So Sarah, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me. No such thing as small media. It's all big media.
You said that in Green Room, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
I like that. That's a good statement. That's a really good way to go. And I will agree with your statement also earlier that you are definitely way more kind already than Adam Smith, and we haven't even had him on the program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And it's good. We'll love to have a conversation. We also have Laura Livengood here who's going to help us with that conversation by taking your questions in the audience. Laura, tell them what they've won.
To what they want. What I am reporting remotely from Oceanside, California tonight, so I'm only on a very small laptop, and I'm trying to juggle a lot of windows in a small laptop. So please, if you have a question for Sarah, please write it all in caps, the word question, or tag me so that I can see it. And I'm going to drop a link to her website so you can check out some of the basics and really save the questions for the stuff that she's not saying that you want to hear.
There you go. There it is. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Sarah, all right. So did you see that? There was already a fly on the screen. I told you. There it is right there. Somebody's going to see that.
Only the best for you, girl.
This is not Jimmy Dore. This is
It's very grassroots. I like it.
Grassroots, including farm flies. So Justice Democrat and Brand New Congress, that's some serious endorsements. How'd you land that? That's very cool.
So the process is actually pretty cool. You're nominated by someone in your community. You can't nominate yourself. Someone nominates you in your community, and they basically just send your reference over to a whole team that combs through, does a full vetting process. And then they do what they did with me. They gave me a quick phone call, and we chatted, and we went through some of the basics. We talked about some policies, how I feel about the current state of affairs in politics. And after some back and forth for a couple months, they said, "Do you want to run in Washington's 9th District?" And I said, yeah. Wow. And I still don't know who nominated me. I don't want to know. I didn't ask because I feel like not knowing means that it could be anybody that I pass by on the street. And I feel like it makes me work harder. So I chose not to know.
Oh, I like that.
That's really cool, actually. And that's a great way to look because it could be anybody in your district or outside of it, really, right? I remember when they were doing the national calls and they were putting out, tell us who you'd like to have us endorse or run. And so that's phenomenal. That's congratulations. That's really cool.
Thank you.
So was healthcare. We were talking earlier about healthcare and how it's kind of on everybody's mind right now with a lot of things going on. As a matter of fact, even with the gun violence incident in Las Vegas, we have people that are going to need health care, and we're already talking about setting up those GoFundMes because these people can't afford the bills, which is ridiculous. I mean, we've got a slide here. Your father was saved by Medicare. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, he was. So my parents are older. My dad is in his 70s now, and a couple of years ago, my dad got really, really sick, and it was bad enough to the point that my older sister called me and she said, "You should come up to Oregon," because I was in college in Arizona at the time. And she said, "You should come up to Oregon. This is really bad." And so we tried to coordinate and bring something fun. So I blew through my entire savings to buy a ticket and fly up to be with my family for a couple days. And we turned it into a little surprise. And that picture actually that's featured in the article is all of us the day that I showed up and surprised my dad. And he doesn't really remember this photo because he had blood poisoning. Oh, and geez. So it was blood poisoning and cellulitis. And he was really, really sick. And it was because he had access to Medicare that my dad could even go to the doctor and get seen. Because my dad had access to this, it didn't bankrupt my family. And we were wiped out completely by the crash in 2007. My dad was forced to retire then because if he didn't, and he didn't early access some of his retirement benefits, my family would have gone under completely. So we sold our house, uprooted our life. It wound up leaving me on my own at 17. And I couldn't watch my family go through that again, especially as you know, retired people do not exactly have a whole lot of money. So
Unless you're the 1%, but yeah.
Exactly. Unless you're fortunate enough to have a multi-billion-dollar windfall in your back pocket, which my family is not, unfortunately. But I couldn't watch them go through that again. And it's because of Medicare access that my dad didn't just get care, he got good quality care. So he got access to a really good hospital in Oregon. He got access to an excellent specialist, to a man who is actually a fantastic geriatric specialist that he still works with to this day. And it's because of Medicare that my dad is still with us now and will continue to be. And part of the urgency behind my very strong outspokenness for HR 676, which is Rep. Conyers Medicare for All bill, is no family should have to worry about that kind of thing. No kid should stand next to their dad's hospital bed and think to themselves, God, I can't watch my family go bankrupt again. That no one should ever have to go through that. And it's right now, medical bankruptcy is the leading cause of bankruptcy in our country, in the wealthiest country in the world. And people are making, gallows style jokes about how GoFundMe is now the largest healthcare provider in the United States. And that's not good enough. My story should be an exception. It shouldn't be a rule. People shouldn't have to be terrified that their parents are going to go bankrupt again because of medical bills. And I feel very strongly and very passionately that no person should forego care, because if my dad had waited even just a little longer, if he'd waited a week, he's an older guy. He wouldn't have survived that. But I try to imagine if I were somebody who didn't have health insurance, and I was for a very long time in my life, someone who didn't have health insurance, if I had done what my dad did, which is, it wasn't the Nazi V2 bombings in London that took him out. It wasn't moving overseas and uprooting his life. It wasn't building his family up. It wasn't losing everything in the crash. It was stepping on a stinging nettle at the wrong time in the garden.
Oh,
and if he had waited an extra week, or if he didn't have the ability to go have someone take a look at that, he'd be dead. And that's my dad. I look up to my dad. He's an amazing person. He's lived an incredible life. And the thought of losing him to something so stupid as stepping on a stinging nettle, it's hard for me to talk about it right now. Looking at that picture, remembering how I felt, it was horrible. And I want to make sure that when I go, I leave the world better than I found it. And what better way than to ensure that no kid has to look at her dad in a hospital bed and be terrified about her parents being able to survive that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. And I think we're all, I'm not insured right now. I can't afford to be. I'm one accident away from, I don't even know what, right? So, and I think there's a lot of America that is one stepping on a stinging nail away from bankruptcy, from having to do desperate measures to live. And that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
And it ties into, I'm just going to go right here because we've got Adam Smith, who takes a lot of money from the military industrial complex, which Washington has a nice business going up there with those guys, especially Boeing, as you were telling me. And, it just seems like you use the word decency. There is no decency when we can spend $700 billion on military and nothing on healthcare. Where do you see? Would you work to reduce military spending at all?
Absolutely. I have been very passionate and very outspoken about my belief that we are overspending on the military by an astronomical amount. And I actually have a background in classical studies from the University of Arizona. And
Nice.
Every time I see the military budget and those graphs that show our budget and the distribution of funds, every time I see that, all that echoes in my head is Rome fell when the military had too much power and the wealth gap between the poor and the elite was way too big. And that's all that I can think of, is that's what crushed Rome. We're seeing this. History is the true, what is it? True Detective, where they say history is a flat circle. It's like staring at history, and we have the chance to do something about it. And as someone who's got a background in that, I can point to it and say the military budget is overinflated. We're spending so much money going overseas and fighting undeclared wars that Congress hasn't even debated because of the authorized use of military force that we thought was okay in 2001. And we're spending astronomical funds to go fight oil wars for other countries that we just don't need to be fighting. And as a result, it's regular people that are suffering. It's our roads that are suffering. It's our students that are suffering. It's sick people who are suffering. These are American lives that are being lost right here at home because we're so focused on this nebulous moving goalposts idea of a foreign threat.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And I think that's one of the reasons why we need people like you in office, is to remove guys like Adam Smith who have no problem taking money. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, in terms of vote. I was reading an article where he was talking about, basically Adam's difficult to run against for a lot of weird reasons because he looks good on most counts. And if you're pro-military, you're like, what's wrong with this Democrat, right? And so define for me, you were in a discussion with him. You said you cleaned his clock the other night. So tell me how do you define the difference between you and Adam Smith?
The difference between me and Adam Smith is Adam Smith he's been doing the bare minimum to be counted as a Democrat or a progressive Democrat. He's been doing the bare minimum. So he only takes half measures. And that way you can point and be like, well, no, look, I sponsored a bill for freight infrastructure. So to revamp all that freight infrastructure. So I'm progressive. That's an infrastructure bill, which yes, okay, by definition, that's an infrastructure bill. And, okay, freight is important and how we move freight is important. But the real strain on our infrastructure comes from people, not from freight.
Right.
And so what we need is the American Society of Civil Engineers says that we need $4.6 trillion in overhaul just to bring us up to speed. And last night in our roundtable, he was asked, how much would you spend? And he goes, oh, hundreds of billions. And I'm like, I would spend trillions because that's what we need. And it's just because he's taking these half measures and then he's stopping.
Right.
So he's making a couple steps, but he's not willing to go the full mile. He won't be bold. He won't chase real progressive policy. And then the fact of the matter is right now in Congress, it's with a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate, and a Republican-controlled White House. It's really easy to become a progressive as a Democrat. It's really, really easy when you're not going to risk these votes coming up or donors or losing donor money or anything like that. It's super easy. What's hard is to hold the line and be progressive when it counts. And when he was in office, when we had a supermajority in the House and the Senate, and we had the White House, he didn't sign on to HR 676. He didn't put forth legislation for public debt-free college. He didn't help sponsor any kind of legislation for infrastructure overhaul, for major meaningful infrastructure overhaul. So it's like he takes these half steps and partial measures, but not when it counts. So yes, on paper, he doesn't look too bad, but it's frustrating because you just want him to be bold and he refuses to do it. And after 21 years in office, we just don't have time to wait for him to drag his feet and take bold steps. We need someone in office who's going to do it now because we just can't wait another 21 years.
Well said. Absolutely. He's an incremental Democrat, right?
Exactly,
and
yes.
That's the establishment way, is to, oh, but look, I did that over there. We moved an inch. It's like, yeah, but we lost a foot over here when you signed this bill, right? And Dianne Feinstein, we got a lot of these top Democrats who are just hanging around, collecting dust, basically, not doing much with our government. So that's a very clear difference between you and Adam. I appreciate that. Healthcare is a human right, so I take it you're single payer all the way and believe that we should fund it. And how would a lot of people argue there's no money for that? How do you combat that statement?
Well, if we have $72 billion that we can throw into the military budget, I think we have $72 billion we can put towards a single payer option. And I mean, this discussion came up in 2016 during the presidential primaries when we had Hillary and Bernie who were out there, and Bernie was giving his strong message about single payer Medicare for all. He talked about the Robin Hood tax.
Right.
And we've just kind of stopped talking about that for some reason. But I absolutely think that needs to come back into the conversation, because I'm also a big fan of I'm very enthusiastic about debt-free publicly funded college and vocational school. And that was the way that we proposed to fund it then. And the projection said that we could pretty much wipe out student debt. I think it was 5 years, $1.44 trillion. We could wipe it out and then just generate billions of dollars in revenue off of this that we could use. And the money is there. We just aren't spending it right.
And I think that's that message. I'm so glad you said that. That's the point. The money's there. It's not being spent right. I think at this point, anybody who wants to argue we need more military really needs a check. You've got an adequacy issue if you think we need more. I really think that's what we built, is the largest penis extension for the United States you've ever seen in the history of any. And we're really proud of that, but I'd like a brain extension. Let's get some education back in the United States. Thank you for that. Moving on, I want to talk about you guys doing well with fighting, Fight for 15 at success, but we got this right to work is wrong. Talk about that, right to work, and where you stand with unions and labor.
Oh my gosh, right to work. That's not even the right name for it. It's more like right to not work, right for employer to fire you whenever they want. Exactly. I'm very pro-union. I have a friend who recently just joined one of the unions up here. He took a union job and he's like, it's so much better. It's awesome. And he talks about how he loves working for his union and everything like that. But unions, everyone thinks they've been demonized a lot, especially in the conservative crowd and through Republican rhetoric. They've demonized unions as they just are after your money. And that's not true at all. What they're after is protecting you and making sure that your employer doesn't take advantage of you. Because we've got jobs that are now minimum wage jobs with no benefits that 20 years ago, they used to be jobs that paid $15 an hour, which was astronomically over minimum wage then. I think the equivalent today would be something like $28 an hour with full benefits. Right. And that was because of unions. They protected those benefits. They protected those wages and protected those workers. I'm absolutely in favor of labor unions and things like that because of the benefit they have for the working people. And we've just allowed this script to be rewritten about unions that it just flat out isn't true. Right to work is such a bogus name for what that kind of legislation is. I think there's a bill in the House right now to try and convert all of us on a national scale to right to work. And I think that's wrong, that it's depriving workers of the real opportunity to have a protected, good paying job with benefits.
Yeah, we've seen this before, right? Study of history.
Yeah, again, study of history. We've seen this.
We know what it's like when kids work 15-hour days and they're in coal mines, right?
Yeah, and we all worked 80-hour weeks. I don't want to do that. I'm already working 40 hours on top of campaigning. I don't want to work 80 hours.
Yeah, and so that's a good point to bring up. So you are working as well as campaigning at the same time right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am. I'm working full-time for a business in downtown Renton, and I love it. My boss is very supportive. He's a great boss.
That's awesome.
And I like what I do. And I'm really, really fortunate that I have a supportive work family that allows me to do this stuff and be passionate about it. But I still have to work my 40 hours because unfortunately I have bills to pay and student loan debt, and I have a mortgage to pay and car payments. So I don't have the resources and the fiscal power to just stop working.
And if you're running for office, you're going to have some debt from that too, so it's going to be exciting. Yeah.
My husband's trying not to think about it too. So,
well, thank you. I mean, I only bring that up to let everybody know, this is a financial. You're making an investment in the United States of America. Basically, you're in yourself and working for us. And there's a lot that goes on besides time. I mean, you really are investing a lot of you and your family, and your husband's involved. He's your tech guy, right? That's a huge commitment. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. I mean, at the end of the day, to me, it has nothing to do with me at all. At the end of it, it's not about me. It didn't start about me, and it won't end about me. Nice. So it's important that someone needs to do this, and we need someone who will stand up and run and be the voice of our district. And I'm willing to take that on because I want to make the world a better place for my friends. I wanted to make it a better place for their kids, for my kids. I just leave it better than I found it. That's my mantra.
Nice. Very Bernie.
Thank you.
Hey, Laura, live and good. Anybody got any questions out there?
No questions yet.
No? All right.
They're just getting warmed up.
All right. Well, good. All right, then I'm going to, our wonderful team that does our content, grab this from your site. I want you to comment on this. Regulate this, not our bodies.
Yes. So we had that abortion bill that went through the House recently. And I am a longtime feminist. I'm a longtime supporter of Planned Parenthood, of NARAL. I have 3 sisters. So we are all very strong, outspoken, pro-women, pro-feminism women. My dad raised us to be feminists. My dad is a feminist. It's
wonderful.
You can't have 3 daughters and not be a feminist. Or 4 of us total. I have a half sister. She lives overseas, but so he has 4 daughters, and I have 3.5 sisters. So
nice.
Can't be that and not be a feminist. But right now we are more focused on regulating women's access to birth control and women's access to safe abortions than we are guns. And
right.
There are stricter regulations on what I can and can't take to not get pregnant than there are on what kind of gun I can go into a local gun shop and purchase, and how much ammunition I can purchase, and how many guns I can purchase. And I just think, as a woman, I can assure you I've killed a lot less people with my vagina than someone has with a firearm. And that just, the skewed priorities just, my brain can't fully wrap itself around that, because in my head, in the priority list on that scale, women's access to birth control and guns are just, they're like this. They're not even visible because they're so far apart in priority. And we need to put more priority on firearms and gun regulations and things like that. We also need to make sure that we're part of being a representative is being a steward of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we also need to make sure that we're operating within that scope. But the big thing that we need to focus on is we need to make sure that we're not putting our right to bear arms above our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think it was in 2014 alone, 33,599 people died to firearms. And we need to look at that figure. Millions of people have been killed because of firearms. And at this point, the tables are turning and things are shifting. We need to reprioritize and make sure that we're providing progressive gun control that actually it listens to the Second Amendment, but not at the expense of other people and human life.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things we regulate more than something that can kill us. My favorite quote so far was that, if you say that a car and a knife are equivalent to a gun, then you have those 2 things. Why do you need your gun? Right?
Exactly.
What's the difference?
And I mean, someone made a comment about, I can't take any credit for this. I read it somewhere, but someone said, imagine if you'd driven a truck into the crowd. And then someone responded with, yeah, it's almost like we'd regulate that truck, make him register it, take a test, and get his license for it.
Right. Yeah. The laws that we see being pressed down on us at this point are nonsensical because they're not designed for the sake of people. They're designed for the sake of profit. And that's why nothing makes sense. It's really bizarre. This whole thing really is about regulating profits in the healthcare industry and taking care of some weird Christian, I'm guessing it's some weird Christian thing going on there on the Republican right. I don't know, because it seems to have disappeared. Trump isn't really pushing he's pushing the. What do you think of 45? How much do you give him the rest of the year? They're talking 25th Amendment right now. What do you think? There's any chance, or do you think he's stuck there?
I'm really hoping there's a chance. I try to be a glass half full kind of person. I try to keep in mind. In the back of my head, I always remember the story of Pandora, and after the Furies were done with her, hope remained. So I'm trying to just be really hopeful that people will invoke this 25th Amendment. But I think we're going to have to wait till after 2018, because the reality is the Republican and conservative chokehold in Congress right now is something they really want to hold on to. And they're trying to ram through all these bills. And so I think they'll ride this out for as long as they can stomach, until he starts picking fights with Mitch McConnell or Paul Ryan. I don't think they're going to have the spine to stand up for him because what's happened is it's become less about the people and less about Congress having any kind of integrity and doing its job. And it's become more about how much legislation can I ram through before this is unbearable. And I just think the only phrase that comes to mind for me is have some dignity.
Right.
It's just, I can't handle that. Have some dignity, have some class. Come on.
Well, apparently some GOP folks got together from the old school and wrote a letter to that regard, but they're all on the take, and we don't even have a unified Democratic Party against Trump. We have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer still trying to work deals with Mr. Insane. They recently found out that he wasn't going to hold his word with them on the docket. Go figure. Nancy's I just love that. She's like, we made a deal with Trump, and then, yeah, guess what?
Man who lies to everybody lies to us.
Exactly. So just everybody for the record, in terms of working hard and what we have to do here for Sarah Smith, here's where Adam Smith is at. This is cash on hand. He's loaded in terms of what he needs for District 9. And Sarah is actually doing really well for somebody who is a progressive who's looking for us to help her out. And I just point that out because it's up to us to fund Sarah. So you're looking at some serious, here, where are we going here? Some stats, some money raised, spent. There's where he gets his money from, though. See, Northrop Grumman, Deloitte, General Dynamics. There's more. Defense electronics, lawyers and law firms, building trade. He's supposedly taking some union money. That's where unions get tricky, right? Is because there's a lot of unions right now backing some establishment-y people. And, that's weird. You guess you got to be careful with what union you're grabbing, or aligning yourself with. Have you found, have any unions backed you yet at this point or endorsed you?
Not yet. I haven't gone out in search of their endorsements yet, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to start going and talking to them and just talking to their leadership. My ultimate preference would be individual donations all the way. I'm swearing off corporate money. I don't take any kind of super PAC contributions, or I don't work with them at all. I'm not taking any deep pocketed money. Right now, actually, one of the biggest ways that I can illustrate the difference between my campaign and the way we're running and Adam's campaign and the way it's running is Adam's having a fundraiser in about a week. And the suggested individual donation for an attendee is $500.
Holy cow.
To put into perspective, my average individual donation is $25. And that to me is mind-blowing, that you have $500 that you can just give to someone. $25 is my husband and my entire budget for date night. So when I see that figure, I'm like, whoa, we spiked up to $27 last month. And I was like, that's crazy. Oh my gosh, $27. But I mean, it's inaccessible. And it's unbelievable to me that the party of the working people would have fundraisers that are inaccessible to the working people, because then it just becomes about paying money to go rub elbows and take photo ops with people. It's not about the people at all. It's not about the constituents. It's not about the working class. It's not about rebuilding the middle class. It's not about a fundraiser about Medicare for all. It's not a fundraiser that's going to help any kind of policy that's about the Summer for Progress or anything like that. It's literally just about come have dinner with me and give me $500.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with our democracy is these $500 is just an unreal amount. If I gave away $500 right now, I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage. So that kind of illustrates exactly the schism between the people that Adam is working with and fighting for versus the people that I'm working with and fighting for. I don't take corporate money because I don't want to represent corporations. I want to represent people. So I need to work with the people. And if people aren't willing to give me their money and put that kind of fiscal faith in me, and they aren't willing to donate to my campaign, then it means I'm doing something wrong. And I just can't imagine asking people for $500 and then thinking I'm doing something right. Because I know Adam is about 70% funded by PACs and by the military right now.
Right.
And I'm 100% funded by individual donations. So it just creates a huge schism between our campaigns. And you can really see the difference between what we're trying to accomplish right there in our fundraising. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And I just want to bring up a point on that military spending. This is where it gets all tricky with Adam Smith, because this is Democratic establishment spending. He wants to get rid of budget caps because that would allow them to increase spending without worrying about the budget, which is a big issue right now. He has no problem with a $700 billion budget for the defense because that's money for his district. That's money for him. That's the people that are donating the $500. that's an unspoken agreement right there. They all know what they're getting out of Adam Smith for that, right? That they're getting this defense contracts, right?
Exactly.
So who are the people you're going out there? You're door to door. You're talking to the real people in this district. What do they want? Do they want more contracts for defense?
No, they do not. My district is really interesting. We are a majority, which the colloquialism is a majority minority district. So we're majority immigrant families, majority people of color. That's the majority in our district. And we also span from one of the poorest areas in King County through Mercer Island, which is right across the shore from where Bill Gates lives, which is also in my district, and Jeff Bezos has lived on Mercer Island. So we span a huge range of different incomes. And I've actually made a point to go to every single one of these cities and canvass in these areas and knock on doors and talk with people.
Did you talk to Jeff? Was he there?
I tried. Man, I really tried. I was trying to figure out which door was Bill's, but but I've gone out and I've talked with people, and every time I knock on someone's door and we get the opportunity to start chatting, they're dying for someone to be bold. They want bold representation. The message that we've got, it has spanned across different income levels, from families making $300,000 a year to families making $30,000 a year. This kind of platform is something that the people in this district have been dying for. They've been hungry for this, and they just want someone who's going to step up to the plate and who's going to fight. And I've been a fighter my whole life. My mom will tell you. I've been someone who fights for the underdog. I always do it. My mom has a story where an adult was not being particularly kind to a friend of mine, and I snapped at them and I told them off, and my mom got a call about it. She's like, "Oh no, it's my daughter."
Nice.
But I don't like watching people who are disenfranchised and people who are marginalized and pushed aside and who are struggling to be dismissed constantly. And the fact is, we just can't keep waiting for someone to take the reins. Someone just needs to do it. And around my district, between all income levels, across every door I've knocked, across every neighborhood, South Seattle, Bellevue, Kent, Federal Way, everyone's had the same response. This message resonates with people. People are ready for change. And I think after 21 years of borderline inaction in our district, it's time that one of the most progressive areas in Seattle has that bold progressive change.
Well said. Agreed. I mean, you're Seattle. We all thought you were
right? We're Seattle.
We thought
Bob
you
Ferguson
were,
is our guy.
Yeah, you're like the pretentious of progressive. You're supposed to be way up there, right?
We're like annoyed not everyone is progressive. Like,
Yes. Yeah. I want to ask you about this, and it appears that you guys are on the same wavelength here, but then again, I don't really know Mr. Smith. He's got a bill going through, or trying to get through here, regarding the immigration jails and the fact that they're private, right? They're profit centers, and it's just disgusting, the conditions, what's going on there. Where do you stand on this, and what's going on in your state with these things?
So our state has actually a very good friend of mine. I'm on the Neighborhood Action Coalition for South King County, and a very good friend of mine, who's our president right now for our coalition, went and did a tour of, it's called, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's called the SCORE Jail, which is one of our detention centers. And he toured it and talked to the warden and everything like that. And as much as a detention jail can be, he said it was the best he could have possibly hoped for. And he's huge on immigrant rights, on immigration rights. He goes to downtown Kent and passes out Know Your Rights flyers and things like that, and voter files and things like that. He registers Spanish speakers, and he's fluent, and he's a really amazing person. And he said that our detention center is probably on the better end by comparison to where other detention centers fall. But Adam and I do agree on this. For-profit prisons and private prisons are abhorrent. They are a blight. They're an absolute stain. The fact that one even exists in my state, I just find it unbelievable that one even exists in this state. Yeah. But Adam and I are pretty much on the same side on this, and I'll agree with him. And I actually think it's a good thing for him to be behind. And I'm actually really glad to see him behind this kind of legislation, because this is something that where we have a high immigrant community, especially in the 9th District, it's really crucial that he be involved in these kinds of things. And I am at least glad that we align on this subject.
Wonderful. See, there's something we can find in common.
Yes, I'm all about common ground.
So when he's your constituent, you can help him with that.
Yeah.
Neighborhood Action Coalition. What's up with this? What's going on here?
These neighborhood action coalitions are really cool, actually. So there's the term we all use is the GSNAC, which is the Greater Seattle Neighborhood Action Coalition. And a few of us in South King County realized that the needs of South King County are very different than Seattle City. So we have we're a little slower. We have a lot of different needs down here. Our priorities are very different. The types of communities that are in Seattle City Center versus South Seattle, even, for example, and Kenton, Renton, and Auburn, they're all very different. And so we kind of split off and made a sister coalition with them for people that are specifically in South King County. So we have a Facebook group too. So it's SKCNAC, SKCNAC,
Nice.
and you can find us on Facebook. We recently held a town hall for Renton City Council candidates. That was something that we put together, and I ran audio visual for them, which was really cool. So I did all their recording and Facebook live streaming, and my husband moderated it. But it was a really, really cool event. And so that's the kind of thing that they're doing. They're making sure that they're reaching out into their communities. They're talking with a bunch of activist groups. And they're working really hard to make sure that community members who want to be engaged can be engaged and can stay engaged. So it's a really cool thing that sprung up after November that I just thought was really awesome. And we've been pretty involved with them. And I love working with the group. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. This isn't even the same event. This card that I was putting up here. You do a lot of these live streams and town halls and stuff, right?
I like to be accessible and out there and available for people. That's the job, right?
What kind of rep is that? Like accessible and touch.
Be present.
That's weird. I don't want. That's new and different and bold.
It's scary. Honestly, getting live questions and talking about these things in town halls, it's really intimidating because you never know what people are going to be prioritizing, what someone's going to be concerned about, if you're going to have all the answers. But I think that being engaged and being available to people and talking with people and being present for them in the neighborhood, you don't know what you don't know. And if no one comes and talks to you about these things, you don't know this is a big deal in this area. But how do you know that if you're not going out there and talking to them and touching base with them and reaching out to them? So that's a really important part of being a candidate to me, is making sure I'm engaging with members of the community, with different kinds of communities. And I always end everything with, please email me your questions. Please tell me what questions you have. I want to answer people's questions. And if I don't immediately have an answer, I want to find an answer for people. No one congressperson knows everything. I have to be willing to go and look for this stuff. So I'm in the habit of it now, which means I'm going to be in the habit of it in Congress. And it's something that I want to continue to do even through up till my last day in Congress.
Sorry, you stopped my heart a few words back. I don't know. You're way younger than me, but I was just thinking of Red Fox and Lisbeth on Sanford and Son, because it's like a heart attack. All the words that come out of your mouth are logical and sensical and what we want to hear out of a representative, but none of them really do these things, save maybe Bernie Sanders, right? It's like the only living example of what we're talking about right here. That's amazing. I hope you get an opportunity to do just that for everybody, because that's what we need. Somebody, my God, listening to the people. I don't know what to say. Crazy talk. Ridiculous.
I know. That's what I want to do. I want to listen to the people. This whole job is about public service. It's about serving the people and being there for them. And I'm not going to presume to know what the needs of the people are. I want people to tell me what their needs are. That's the whole point of this job, is for people to be able to tell you their needs and you to be able to vote and introduce and push legislation according to the needs of your people. That's really what this is all about. And that's honestly what I want to do. I'm hungry for that opportunity to serve people. I want to, because like I said before, it's not about me, it's about everyone else. And so I want everyone else to come and talk to me and tell me about these things and tell me their concerns. I've actually reached out to libertarians, and I've had conversations with Republicans, and I've reached out to people in the Green Party. And I'm just trying to take this charge of reaching across the aisle very seriously and making sure that if I represent this district in the 9th, I think we run about 25% Republican. It's important that I reach out to them too, because they're constituents, they're people in my district. They deserve to have the opportunity to talk with me just as much as any Democrats do.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's well said. Talking, and you've said this a couple times, and I love it. You say, look, I'm not a congressperson. I'm not supposed to know everything. I mean, no real person does. Apparently, everybody in Congress, though, knows more than scientists do about science and climate. And I'd like to know where you stand on climate. We got California on fire, things underwater, things going on. I asked this of all the contestants. I feel like we're on Wheel of Fortune tonight, Laura. I don't know what the deal is. It's just a Wheel of Fortune night. You're just shaking your head. I know.
I keep waving my hand with questions, but
I missed
nobody
it. No,
calls
no.
on me.
No. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Do we have questions?
I know.
Great. Let's go into it.
Well, I did. This one was way back from when we were talking more about legislation, but saying that representatives from the U.S. and Canada and Mexico are trying to renegotiate NAFTA, like right now. And what are your thoughts about NAFTA?
Oh, good question.
That was from Jeff Pearson, by the way. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff Pearson. I think NAFTA was a bad deal for American workers. I think I've done a lot of familiarizing myself with NAFTA and with the provisions of it. I've read the stances of politicians that I respect, and I think NAFTA was it took good jobs away from Americans, and it didn't replace them with good paying jobs. It replaced them with low wage service industry based jobs. It took away a lot of bargaining power from unions. It hurt a lot of our machinist jobs. It hurt a lot of those manufacturing jobs we hear of that are leaving this country. It took a lot of work away from Americans and a lot of wages out of our pockets and a lot of money out of our economy. I don't think it was a good deal, and I don't think it was negotiated right. And I'm glad they're in talks to negotiate it, but I don't think it was a good thing to have in place in the beginning. I think it's part of what's contributing to our economic problem now.
Oh, hey, ladies, that's a bill, though. You don't want to pick on Bill Clinton's bill. Come on now.
Sorry.
So, well, good answer. I mean, and I love that you cited sources. I read stuff from people I respect. That's good. Yeah, thank you. From what I understand, and Bernie said this, most trade deals are bad deals, right? It's a paraphrase. Any other questions, Laura?
Yeah, Melissa just asked, she'd like to know, Sarah, what you think about, I'm sorry, these are long questions. Very tiny screen.
People with your long questions.
I know.
Good, it means they're well thought out.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, should we have a cabinet level Secretary of Science and Tech?
Ooh, a Secretary of Science and Tech.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting
question. This is
going
to be one of Melissa's standard questions, so there you go.
Okay. So she's been here before. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
She's asked this before. So.
Thank you for asking that question, honestly, Melissa. That's a really good question. So I think that's something, my gut instinct is to say, yes, of course we should science and tech, but then we also run the risk of what happens if that's an appointed position and we get a president like Donald Trump who thinks that climate change isn't real. And he puts someone regressive that's going to push back on science and tech and things like that. What if we get someone who's a science denier or thinks we shouldn't explore outer space and we should defund NASA and shouldn't make, strides with alternative energy? So that's the kind of thing that I tend to be a multifaceted thinker. So I tend to have a gut reaction and then I stop and say, wait, what could the potential consequences be? So I think that's a really good question. And that's a really interesting one. That's something for me to think about, but I'll make sure I shoehorn that into another interview so I can make myself answer it.
Well, and just, I love Melissa's question. I appreciate your answer because we basically have that role, though it's Lamar Smith in the space science and technology little group within our Congress, but Lamar is not qualified to be that. So I think what Melissa's really going at is that this person would need to be qualified, right?
Yes, absolutely. I can't believe that we're having someone in the EPA who doesn't have a background in anything related to the EPA.
No, just money.
Yeah, just a lot of money, which I guess is a qualifier somewhere. But I think absolutely, I would love to see us hammer out qualifications and qualification requirements for these positions. I think if you're going to be the leader for HUD, you should probably have some experience doing housing and urban development. Just for an example off the top of my head.
Ben was urban. All right, at least he was urban.
He lived in a house. That's good.
See,
that's a good qualifier, I guess. But
come on, you have to admit that the people that are in office in these roles right now we've never seen the likes. It's unprecedented, the lack of qualifications in all of these roles, right? When you've got somebody like David Clark being considered, who made up his own masters. The guy didn't even. Anyway, hey, Laura, before I move on, we're going to get back to climate and science. Laura, were there any other questions?
I've got one for climate and science later, but Rory just wants to know what ideas Sarah has about rebuilding the economy or the job market in your district.
Oh, good question.
Yes. So my district is home to Boeing. We're home to a lot of mechanic work. We're home to a lot of machinist work. We're home to a lot of these things. And so I think that I just want to put a disclaimer on this. A lot of the things we want as people, we're told, are in different compartments. So we're told healthcare is separate from education, which is separate from the green economy, which is separate from the job market. But that's not true. These aren't separate boxes. They're rooms in a house, and you need all of them in order to make that house functional. So I think the best possible way we can rebuild our economy is by implementing each of these major things that we want to implement, like universal healthcare and access to debt-free education, access to vocational schools. Because one of the things we need to do, one of two major things that we need to do in order to help jumpstart our economy, is invest back in our people. That's one of the most best proven ways for us to jumpstart our economy again. And we do that in the form of investing in new industry, which right now is most strong in green energy. So investing in a green energy economy, and not just assembling things here in the US like we do. We don't just assemble things. We should be manufacturing things. We should be manufacturing the components to solar panels and putting together those solar panels. Investing that $4.6 trillion into our infrastructure. We're going to need people to build these roads. We're going to need people to design these roads, to design these downtowns, to build these downtowns, businesses to occupy these new downtown areas. So when we turn around and we have this reinvestment in the people, and we invest in new industry, and we're putting money into a green energy economy, and we're making real strides in investing in our infrastructure, that's when we're going to see the economy jumpstart itself, because all of a sudden people are making good wages. They're making livable wages. People no longer have to pay for healthcare because we have Medicare for all, which means that's an extra up to $1,000 a month for people to be putting back into the economy. People have debt-free education, which the average is $350 a month, which means that's $350 a month more that's going into the economy, right. Which is money that we see come back to us. So all of this has to work together. We all need this to make sure that we need to all make sure that all these pieces are working together, because all of that's going to help jumpstart our economy.
Well, I'm glad you brought up education, and I love the house representation where they're all containers in the house. That's a beautiful representation, because it's true. You hear everybody talks about an individual issue, but when I've heard Bernie try to say it's complicated, all these things, but everybody just glazes over, right? Because they don't know how to compartmentalize it, which is what we're doing here. But you mentioned Washington's very tech. You got a lot of tech stuff going on there. You and I both see the future here. So does Elon Musk and everybody else, that robots are going to be doing a lot more of this mechanic work, this automated work. So, does education tie in there as well? What are we doing with our citizens? And I just want to throw UBI at you because you're a progressive. And what do you think of that?
So I think there's a kind of a two-pronged answer to that one. So education, I'll start with education, because I can get a little ranty about education. I'm very passionate about it. So excuse me if I do that. Education is crucial to so many of these things that we want to do, because we can't build solar panels if we're not training people in vocational fields on how to build them. Right. We can't design solar fields if we're not paying for people to go to a university and learn these skills on how to design them. If we don't have the skills in our workforce, we're never going to be able to jumpstart that economy that I keep coming back to, that green economy. Right. We're never going to be able to invest in it because we're not going to have the skilled workforce. So we must make sure that we're providing that education to people. And we need to make sure that education is debt-free. All people deserve to have access to education. Right now, the way that our system is set up, it disproportionately affects low-income families and people of color. And that's just wrong. Education is something that people use to build themselves up. I talk about my dad literally collecting scrap metal from bombed out ruins when he was a child. He used to hike multiple miles to go get meals from the Red Cross delivered in an emergency truck. But it was because he went to school and because he got educated that he was able to build his life up and become something and become somebody and come to the US and build up that dream for us and for my family. That's education that did that.
Yes.
Everybody should have that opportunity. We can't keep talking about this American dream and then refuse people the tools to actually achieve that American dream. And so I apologize. The second part of your question was about UBI.
Yes.
UBI is an interesting one. I've actually gotten this question more than once. And so I really like the theory behind UBI, but there have been mixed messages and studies and things like that. And I don't think it's going to be the silver bullet that people are hoping it's going to be. I think right now we have a huge opportunity to focus on long-term solutions in the society that we've got now, which are really important for us to focus on, because that's going to be some kind of immediate relief. I think UBI is something we should definitely address in the future and talk about in the future. I love that we're having this conversation now before it becomes a problem. I'm a serial planner. I can't help it. So I love that this conversation is happening now, but I personally I don't have the knowledge and I don't have the information that I would want to have to be comfortable saying, yay, UBI or boo UBI. So right now I'm kind of just watching. I think it's Finland right now is experimenting with it. I'm watching them like a hawk, waiting for, I think there's some results that are supposed to come out.
Oh, it's already happened. It's been a success in Finland. We actually, Canada tried it in the 60s. Yeah. I mean, this is, I'll send you some resources because everything that's been done so far has been very successful with it. And what they found was that the people that got the money didn't turn around and spend it on drugs or spend it on fun or whatever. They actually spent it on, some of them got an education. Some of them spent it to improve their work condition. I mean, it's an interesting study. I'll send you results on it. I agree. We're not there yet, but we're going to need it. We're going to need it to provide purpose for people, or, I think it's a future thing, and I'm glad you're willing to talk about it now.
And I do remember reading about how it was they saw the results of people who were actually able to pursue things like education, and then they turn around and they invest that money into the economy. So it frees up money in one area to go put even more money into another area. So I have read those kinds of studies and things like that, but please send me anything that you've got. The last I checked, there was something that was supposed to be, there's some comprehensive study. I can't remember the name of it, but it was supposed to come out, I think early of 2018, they were going to release some more information about it. So that's kind of what I was waiting for. But I'm honestly, you're right. This is a conversation we need to have now, sooner rather than later. So when we do hit that dominantly automated economy, we need to have a plan, because right now we're kind of playing this game where we didn't have a plan for a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with now. And I just want to make sure we have a plan in the future. And if UBI is the solution to that problem, and we look at all the data and that's what the solution is, then that's the solution that I will push enthusiastically and emphatically for all people.
Wonderful. Again, going back to that representation idea. Crazy talk.
Crazy, right? They'll never work. They'll never catch on.
No, never. Laura Livengood, one more shot at questions before we go into
Okay. I got quite a few. Some of them are kind of random. I got to ask this one because I don't even know if it's it. Alpha Gray Knight says, question, how does she feel about a UBI, Universal Healthcare, guaranteed 3D printer combo? Is that a thing? Or is he joking?
Guaranteed. I think...
Gosh, I love a free 3D printer.
I know.
Well, if I understand it, you get a universal income, you get health care, and you get your own 3D printer to make your own replacement organs. I don't know. Or just have purpose at home. I don't know.
That'd be cool.
I'd love a home 3D printer. That's getting into tech. Good question. Do you have Sarah? Do you have
Yeah, good question. How do I feel about that? I think I talked a little bit about the UBI. Universal healthcare, I think, is... To me, every time I hear that, I just get immediately defensive because I feel like it's such a dog whistle term.
Yes.
I believe in single payer universal healthcare.
Let's get that terminology right.
Guaranteed healthcare.
Thank you.
3D printers are awesome. So
there you go.
I would support a 3D printer.
So you would support the package, the bundling of the three.
Yes, I'd support the bundle.
Oh, here's clarification. He says he means if we get everyone a 3D printer capable of printing everything, including a 3D printer and a communal source of printable material.
All right.
Okay. Right
I have
on.
to say, I have never thought about that before. That has never come up in an interview before, but it's a really cool concept.
It is.
I think more on a larger scale, I think what the bigger question is about providing for everybody's basic needs.
Yeah.
So I think that's partly what the government's responsibility is, right? It's to care for the basic needs of the people. All people need housing. All people need access to healthcare. All people need access to education. All people need access to a good paying job, and all people need access to protections from discrimination. So I think if we're talking on a metaphorical 3D printer scale, if you will, about the government providing all of our basic needs, I think that's really what is crucial, and what's at the core here is we need to make sure we have a government that's providing for the people and not just taking away those things they're supposed to be providing so we can go get into more undocumented wars overseas.
Ooh, that's taking an answer. That's beautiful. That was fantastic. Well said. Well said. I'm gonna.
RC, that's a clip.
Do you have Laura Lieben? Could you get one more quick question? What do you got? Anything?
Okay. Here's a nice juicy one. Okay. How can we most effectively advocate for things like Medicare for all and college for all so that candidates like you can run on these proposals and actually win?
Yeah, good question.
And that was from Danny Knapp. Thank you, Danny Knapp. I like that.
Thank you, Danny Knapp. The biggest thing that you can do is to support grassroots progressive candidates as often as possible. If there is a candidate that you read their platform and you're like, that person's got it, that person they know what they're talking about, that's the person for me, get involved. There's more ways to donate to a campaign than just in money. If you can give them time. Door knocking is hard, especially in the hilly areas in Seattle. It's really hard, and I'm realizing how out of shape I am. But going out and helping them door knock, opting to go help do phone banking and things like that, getting behind candidates that you truly support and that truly reflect your values is so important. They need your time. They need your energy. Sometimes I can tell you, so I have some incredible volunteers. I am just blown away by how amazing they are. They have done so much work. This campaign is pieced together because of it's just their love for what we're doing. And it's really, really important to have that core body of volunteers. So if you have a progressive candidate and you want to help amplify their voice, help them out and volunteer with them. I'd be lost without some of mine. They are a killer group. And I just have to give them such a huge shout out because they're amazing people. So really supporting candidates in more ways than with just a small dollar donation. Spread the word about their campaign. If you have an organization that you work with or something like that, or you're part of a nonprofit or you meet someone, tell them about this person. Word of mouth is far more important than we're giving it credit for. Social media is really important. Support them on social media. Just try and make sure that you're supporting them in ways that are more than just monetary. But that's probably the biggest way that I can think of to actually get involved and help progressive candidates that believe in those things.
That's awesome. Well said. Thank you for saying that. It's what she's saying, everybody, is we need to practice democracy. And we want a candidate to win. We got to get off our ass and go. Social media is nice. What we're doing is nice, but you're absolutely right. This organization wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be having this interview if it weren't for all the volunteers that make it happen, right? I don't really know anything about you. I read a bunch of stuff earlier today that some other people put together, and that's how I learned about you really fast, right? It's volunteers that do this work. So thank you very much for mentioning that. I'm glad sounds like you got a good crew working for you.
Yes, I definitely do. And I love all of them. And if they're all watching this right now, I really appreciate every single one of you. They've made my life easier. They've made this campaign fun. They've made their energy gives me energy. It can wear you down. Campaigning is hard. It can wear you down. And just when we get together just to spend some time together, they re-energize me. It's like recharging my batteries. Their enthusiasm and passion it keeps me going.
Awesome. You've pretty much given us a wonderful stump speech for an hour, but do you want to tell us why we should vote for Sarah Smith instead of Adam Smith this year?
So, absolutely. I always want to talk about that. So right now, candidate Adam Smith is saying a lot of really good things, but Representative Adam Smith doesn't have the track record to back up this progressive message he's suddenly trying to espouse. I'm a progressive not because it's convenient. I'm a progressive because it's hard, because it's how I was raised to be, because it's what the compassionate choice is. And right now, we're in the middle of a moral crisis. People are dying without health care. Students are drowning in student debt. We're not bringing any good paying jobs back. Climate change is right at our door, and we are already suffering from it. We don't have 21 more years to wait for our representative to suddenly find their voice. And it's not going to take the election of Donald Trump to get me to step up to the plate and take a swing for people. It's going to take day one getting my foot in the door. It's not going to take me 13 years to sign on to HR 676. That's something I'm pledging to sign on to from day one when I have my first opportunity to start co-sponsoring bills. These are fights that we just can't wait anymore. We need progressives in office who are going to actually show up, who are going to fight the good fight, even when it's hard, not just when it's convenient and not just when it's easy. And that's what I'm pledging to do for my constituents, is I'm pledging to be a leader for them in Congress on the things that matter to them, and protecting the people and listening to the people and not presuming to tell them what they believe in and what they know. I want to be a representative of, for, and by the people. And that's why you should vote for me instead of Adam Smith.
Woo. Well done. That was like, and in under 2 minutes, I believe. That was
Thank you. I'm a very direct person. I'm to the point.
That was really good. That's
Well
what
done.
it should be. That's fantastic. Thank you very much for being on here. Would you come back?
Absolutely, I would. Thank you guys so much. This has been an awesome interview. Thank you very much.
Great.
We'll be watching you. We'll be watching and paying attention and definitely bring you in.
Yeah,
Thank you. Same to you.
Laura.
I'll be watching you too.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Cool.
Thank you, Laura Livengood, for all your hard work tonight
You're quite well.
and booking everybody. Who do we have coming up next week?
Next week, we've got Darlene McDonald will be here on Monday. Wait, I had it right there. And she's running for Congress in Utah. And then Rob Ryers will be here on Wednesday. He is part of the same Justice Democrats, Brand New Congress. Both?
He's Brand New Congress.
Brand New
Rob
Congress.
is a Republican at Arkansas.
Right.
He's cool.
He will be our first Republican guest on We the People. And Sarah has met him and thinks he's awesome. So we're going to take that as a good recommendation. And that's what we've got next week.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. There's a card that shows. Look at all these people that we have booked coming up here. This is so. Thank you, Laura, for all your hard work and booking all these folks.
You are quite welcome.
All right. So thank you, Sarah Smith, for being on the show this evening. Tell us why you picked your outgoing song here, Jordan McCampa. I'm not going to pronounce the name right. Battle Cry. I've never heard it, but I like the song. So tell us about this.
Thank you. This song happened across my playlist a couple months ago, and this just embodies exactly how I feel. This song is just it's the song I listen to when I'm on my way home and I'm getting ready to prepare to go out and do things and be in an interview or something like that. I listened to it on my way home today from work when I was getting ready for this one, but it's such a song of our generation. It really is. It's absolutely something that I recommend everyone listen to, mostly because Jordan McCampa is just amazing. But this particular song is it's all about the people's energy and what we're building and what we're trying to do, and that we're there. People hear us marching. People are ready, and we're out there now. And it's just so captured by the song. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for being here on We the People. We'll see you next Monday for another We the People. And what we got Saturday for Awake. And
Yes.
Sarah Smith, good luck to you. And we will see you again. I know we will. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
All right, everybody. Jordan McCampa, Battle Cry. Do what you can do for Sarah Smith and all other progressives. Not just donate, not just social media. Get out there. Get active. It's good exercise. It's good for you.
I won't stay silent, even without air in my lungs. I'll stand my ground, and I won't run from the guns. Can you hear the people marching louder than the drums? Can you hear the people coming louder than the drums? Can you hear the people marching louder than the drums? Can you hear the people coming?